In his seminar on the Purloined letter, Lacan uses Edgar Allan Poe's classic detective story to explain some of the most important ideas in psychoanalysis. Lacan is not interested in the mystery of who stole the letter or how it was recovered. Instead, he uses the story to show how human beings are shaped, moved, and controlled by the symbolic order, the invisible network of language, rules, and social structures that we all inhabit. His central argument is that we do not use language freely, rather, language uses us. The most important element of Poe's story is the stolen letter itself. In psychoanalytic terms, the letter functions as a pure signifier. A signifier is simply a symbol, a word, or an object that points to some meaning. But here is the crucial detail that Lacan highlights. Neither the characters in the story nor the readers ever learn what is actually written inside the letter. The actual content does not matter at all. The letter has immense power because it exists and moves from person to person. It changes the behavior of everyone who comes into contact with it, regardless of what it says. This illustrates Freud's concept of repetition automatism, the idea that human beings believe they are making free choices, but in reality, they are driven by the mechanical movement of signs within a social structure. The itinerary of the signifier, not individual psychology, determines the place and identity of each subject. Lacan breaks the action of the story into two main structural scenes. The first scene takes place in the royal boudoir. The queen receives a secret letter that could ruin her honor. Suddenly, the king enters the room. To hide the letter from him, she leaves it face down on a table. Then the minister enters. He sees the queen's panic and notices the letter. The minister smoothly switches the real letter with the fake one and walks away. The queen cannot stop him because she cannot alert the king. The second scene takes place in the minister's office. The police have spent months secretly searching his house but have found nothing. The famous detective Dupin visits the minister. Dupin realizes the police failed because they looked in all the hidden places. The minister hid the letter by leaving it out in the open, hanging carelessly from the mantelpiece. Dupin leaves a snuff box behind so he has an excuse to return the next day. When he returns, an intentional distraction outside allows Dupin to steal the letter back, replacing it with another fake letter. Lacan highlights that both scenes involve three specific perspectives, which he calls the three glances. The first glance sees nothing. This is the king in the first scene and the police in the second scene. They assume everything is normal and miss the secret right in front of them. The second glance sees that the first glance sees nothing. This glance tricks itself into believing that its secret is safe. This is the queen in the first scene and the minister in the second scene. The queen thinks the letter is safe because the king is blind to it. Later, the minister thinks the letter is safe because the police are behind it. The third glance sees the first two glances leave the secret completely exposed. This is the minister in the first scene and Dupin in the second scene. They take advantage of the situation and steal the letter. Lacan humorously compares this dynamic to an ostrich. The second person feels invisible because the first person has their head stuck in the sand. However, this blindness allows the third person to calmly pluck the second person's feathers from behind. An important part of Lacan's seminar is showing how the characters change when they hold the letter. The letter does not just pass from hand to hand, it changes the psychology of the person who possesses it. When the minister steals the letter from the queen, he takes over her structural position. He goes from being the active, clever thief to being the passive victim. He puts the letter out in the open, relying on the blindness of the police. But doing this, he falls into the exact same trap the queen fell into. He becomes blind to his own vulnerability. When Dupin takes the letter, he too enters this dangerous cycle. Dupin leaves a note inside the fake letter for the minister to find later. The note contains a quote about ancient brothers committing acts of bloody revenge against each other. Lacan notes that by leaving this personal, aggressive message, Dupin is no longer a neutral, objective detective. He has been drawn into the emotional drama of the signifier. The letter forces everyone into specific roles, proving that the consciousness is shaped by symbolic relationships rather than individual traits. Lacan uses the movement of the letter to explain his three major categories of human experience: the symbolic, the imaginary, and the real. The symbolic is the world of language, rules, signs, and social laws. The letter represents the symbolic order. It is a machine that runs on its own logic. Human beings must fit into this machine. We do not master language, language masters us. The imaginary is the world of the ego, visual images, mirrors, and illusions. The characters in the story are trapped in the imaginary illusions. They look at each other, make assumptions about what the other sees, and trick themselves into feeling powerful or safe. Lacan says these imaginary effects are just shadows and reflections produced by the deeper symbolic chain. The real is what exists outside of language and symbols. It is a raw, unnamable reality that cannot be fully spoken or understood. The blank, unread inside of the letter points toward this dimension of the missing piece or absolute lack. We can never fully grasp the real, but we can sense its presence in the gaps and failures of our symbolic systems. Lacan concludes his seminar with a famous statement that a letter always arrives at its destination. This does not mean that every piece of mail physically gets delivered. It means that a signifier will always find its target because it creates the target itself. Wherever the signifier lands, it forms the subject's reality and unconscious mind. Through Poe's story, Lacan gives his students a profound lesson about the human condition. We are all like the characters in the story. We spend our lives chasing, hiding, and reacting to symbols like money, titles, words, and secrets, whose true internal meaning remains hidden from us. We think we are in control, but we are actually puppets of a symbolic order we barely understand. True psychoanalysis requires looking past personal imaginary dramas to map out the symbolic chain governing our lives. The goal is not to find the hidden meaning behind the letter, but to understand how the letter moves us and positions us without our knowledge.